We're live. So hello again. This is Lena Markbach from Future of Work 24 Hours. We're doing another one of our live conversations. This time we have a larger group here with us who have been working on a Future of Work manifesto. And we're very curious about what that process has been and also why are we making a Future of Work manifesto. So I want to welcome Charlie, Gunnar, Glen, and you, Alanna. So if I first want to give you a moment just to introduce yourself so we know who's in the house here today. Please, Alanna, you want to go first?
Sure, yes. I'm a senior human resources professional in Vancouver, Canada. And have enjoyed working with this for the past year.
Charlie.
My name's Charlie Colpitts. My career has been in software development. I've recently been a Scrum Master and that kind of stuff. I'm now performing organizational development research, and I come to Future Work 24 Hours from a complexity science background and from an open space background.
Okay, good. And Gunnar, I know you're not on video, but I know you're with us here. You want to say a little bit about your context?
Yes, sure. So I was working in a corporate before, now working on a startup. And I came into the whole thing during the last 24 hours event, I think as most of us. And I was asking April whether it would be okay to continue in the year and check that with Tim as well, who had the idea. Yeah, and then we came together and did it.
Yeah, and you did it, yes. And Glen, a little bit about you.
Hi, Glen Hicks. I live here on the east coast of Canada in the province of New Brunswick. I'm a digital independent for the last 6 years. Long background in IT. I've done lots of different roles, including Chief Information Officer. And I'm also the founder of UStation, which is a work anywhere company that supports independence.
Okay, good. Thank you. So you were kind of starting a little bit here, Gunnar, talking about where this started, but can you give a little bit more context of how did this group come together and in what forum?
Yeah, sure. So I think we had this first open space session where at some point in time any of us participated. And I think we were so interested in continuing that we had, I think, on the Miro board left our email addresses. I collected those in order to send the invitation, and that was the start of it. I think we started with maybe 8 to 12 people. At some changes, and the four of us basically are the ones who went through it for the year, and we're looking forward to present it during the next session on FOV 2022. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we, of course, at the Future of Work 24 Hours have been excited to follow along and know that you guys have had this conversation ongoing. We know the open space principles of whenever it starts is when it starts, and whenever it ends is when it ends. And you started a session a year ago that's still been going on, and you've been holding that conversation.
Yep.
And we, of course, love that energy. So I'm curious to hear a little bit of how has that process been? How frequent have you been meeting? We heard that there was a larger group first, and now it's dwindled down to be the four of you who are committed, been working into do this. Glen, you want to say a little bit more? Like, how has that process been?
Yes, it's been great. It's we meet regularly every week on Saturday, and of course, because we're all over the world, it's at different times. I think Alanna is like first thing in the morning. For me, it's noon, and Gunnar, it's like 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and Charlie's just an hour behind me. So it's one of those things you kind of look forward to your Saturday morning routine. And over the last year, this group of foursomes become, I think, quite close as almost friends, really. We've never met in person. We talk a lot about what is the future of work and what's the ideal definition of it, and we wanted to commit that to paper, and we also catch up on each other's what each other are doing. So it's kind of a nice balance. But through the whole course of the year, we went from pages and pages of input and thoughts and ideas, and over the course of the year, we really boiled it down to a one-page manifesto that we kind of feel that these things are what this group believes are important to defining the future of work, both from a values perspective and a principles perspective. And so that's kind of our journey, and it's one of those things you just look forward to. Not, we don't always make it every Saturday. One or two might drop off, but we're usually we always keep coming back. So.
Wow. I mean, I thought you maybe met once a month, but it's been a weekly conversation that's been going on for 52 weeks here. So why is it important for us to try and nail something down? I know the manifesto, and I just put it on the link here where people can view the version of the manifesto. Is it finished? Is it the current version, or is it finished? I'll start there. Alanna, are you finished, or is it still a work in progress?
Well, I think when we think about the future of work, I mean, it's evolving, continuously evolving and developing. And so, I mean, some of the concepts or the principles that we've applied in the future of work manifesto are not necessarily anything that's taking place today, but what would it look like in the future, and is this some can we work towards that? So it's definitely a constant evolution, and I think that really is what a lot of the principles that we've also applied in our practice and how we actually function as a group as well. So
can you give some examples on that of how you've been trying to walk the talk of the manifesto and these values?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's looking at the principles themselves. We've got our dichotomous pairs, and then we have the principles, but everybody has been working together to evolve them. But if we're living with principles, some that come to mind just off the top of my head is definitely working with psychological safety and making sure that we're creating a safe space for everybody to meet and connect and share ideas. We're looking at consent as we're moving through making our decisions as well as a team, and making sure they're consensual as a group. We're also looking at I know Charlie can talk about complexity science, because that was something that I learned from him, which was great throughout this process. But also the other side of things, looking at there's one more that's coming to mind: abundance. So instead of keeping all the information to oneself, how do we share the information? And that's all really part of, I think, the future of work.
Yes, good. And you just threw in there that complexity science, and Charlie, that's your heart space and your expertise space. And how is that? Because when I've just put the link here, so please take a look at the manifesto. So you boiled it all down, right? Because typically, if I think about complexity, it's like, oh, there's a lot of components, and how do we distill it? And then often we make things simpler. So how have you managed this journey from your point of view with knowing all you know about complexities?
Okay. Well, Lena, can I back up just a second? I want to hit a couple of high points that Gunnar covered. First of all, we started, as we're going to start seeing tomorrow, with a marketplace. And, Tim Shand, who is no longer part of our team, was motivated to talk about the manifesto for the future of work because he'd seen the manifesto on Agile. We've seen the manifesto on Agile software development. Tim thought that was really cool. So he convened a session to talk about that. And we attended that session. And as Glen says, the rest is history, right? So we've been working on it for 52 weeks since that opening session. Now that opening session, I don't know tomorrow whether they're going to be 30 minutes or not, but our session was 30 minutes. And we were at it for 5 hours. So we had a 5-hour opening session that continued throughout the year to get to where we are. Okay. Now, we have a couple of principles that I am really passionate about. You know, complexity is one of them. And when I did a lot of thinking about the principles that I was passionate about, my bottom line is I believe that the future of work is disruption. That's a complexity idea. You know, organizations need to be disruptive, and then they reorganize in a new direction to be more productive and to do better things. So part of what's going on with the principles that I care about most strongly, not that I don't care about all of them, but the 2 or 3 that I care about most are about disruption in the workplace. We want to provide a platform. I want to provide a platform and a reason for the workplace to be disrupted, so that people can seek innovative solutions to what's going on in their environment. It's a complexity issue, as is things like scale and variance, which is the fractal argument. Okay, so phenomena that apply at the level of an individual also apply at the level of the organization, all up the hierarchy. That's another complexity principle. Self-organization is a huge complexity idea. Emergent behavior is another complexity idea. So these are some of the dimensions of complexity that I think we need to bring into the workplace for the future.
Yes, good. And when I then look through the values also, I can see that the diversity comes in there as well. Like you want to make sure that you're also holding multiple thought patterns, diversity of backgrounds,
Yep.
diversity of styles, to make sure that you're also having hope, opening up this continuum for those
Yes.
disruptions to happen, right?
Yes.
If
Glenn,
I
I
may,
want to.
then, if I may, that those. So Charlie, we all have our favorites. The couple of values that are favorites of mine are the abundance over scarcity. You know, if we're all competing over the little piece of pie, everybody starves, as opposed to there's lots to go around, and share your ideas, give them away, and you'll be whole. So that's an important one. The other one is the diversity over homogeneity. I truly believe that we are better together because of our differences, not in spite of them. So it's always fascinating. It's one of the core values of U-Station is that, you know, we have people from all cultures and backgrounds and personal orientations, and all together working on common causes. It's one of the most important values that I hold dear.
Mm-hmm.
And I must say, it hasn't all been rosy though. Like, so we've this is a group of people that didn't know each other come together. We don't have a formal organization. We've hit almost every one of these principles through our process. We've dealt with intellectual property issues, like, hey, what happens now? Do we give this away, or do we allow people to do derivative works? Because what if they did a derivative work in something we didn't agree with or felt strongly against? We've dealt with decision making. So it took 52 weeks to get to a one pager. That's like 60 or 80 dichotomous pairs, and there's like 800 pages of documentation that's behind this. So this represents a lot of work to get to a common agreement and consensus on these 10 principles are the most important. So we've done that. We've had like the preserving for psychological safety and allowing people to be themselves. Like, so we've hit a lot of these in our own work, in actually producing this product, if you will.
Yeah.
Great, great. Gunnar, I want to make sure that we also loop you in because I hear their favorites here. So what are some of your favorite values? Are there 6 values and 10 principles? Is there anything you want to highlight that's been close to your passion of yours as you've been going through this process?
Yeah, I must say that I'm supporting all of those, and for me it was important that we have this as a document that can evolve. So we call it exposure draft to get feedback, and also there is a possibility, that this will lead to further work. For example, that when people will decide that they want to do an implementation guide, because this manifesto is like a vision, where people can adhere to and say, this is what we want. But the thing is then, okay, how do you get there? I would like to say that I was pretty much advocating to keep it in a certain style, so that we put really what we want in the sense of non-violent communication, instead of saying what we don't want. So, and I'm very happy with this one, because it allowed also to get it shorter, because it's not needed, that we put also, okay, we don't like this and this and this, let's do this. So, this is something that was very very dear to me, and what we have done, what we have here. So, yeah, and what I'm curious about is maybe tomorrow on Friday, whether there come principles up or values, and then we have good discussions of what we missed out, because we are kind of 4 people, and even though we are somewhat diverse, I think we're not so diverse in reality. I mean, look at us, we are all white, educated, whatever. And so what I'm doing in the site, I took the manifesto, the English one, translated it into French, and working, with a small group, people here to see where it comes. If it hits, people from a small town, and not, like a fancy consultancy, whatever, high-minded people, to see, okay, where it can get to. And we have 3 people who are interested in working on it, and I'm very curious to see this, how to get it grounded in a, let's say, not in a virtual space, but talking about people who whatever can either go in the fields, and grow some cereal or whatever. So that's my point of view. Yeah.
I love that, the way that you're thinking this, right? Because yes, I think we can quickly be like, oh, there's diversity. Look, we got many different countries and different languages represented in your group. You're also only 4 people, so there's only so much diversity you can bring into it. And this was also like, this is who got drawn into the conversation to start with. But I like how you're thinking of like, how can you now have reactions and see what are those reactions to the current, as we heard from Alanna, the current version of what you've worked with so far, right? I just put in the bottom here also a follow-up email. So for anyone who wants to follow up with the people behind the Future of Work Manifesto, you can follow up with an email here. But I'm curious to hear, like, we're having our event starting tomorrow, Thursday, May 12th. And I'm excited to hear that you're going to bring some sessions to life around this. So we, for example, have bilingual or trilingual circle that's got Portuguese, Spanish, and English being supported. Our global circle is going to be multiple languages, right? So you're going to have some of that diversity there. So how are you thinking you want to bring this into the Future of Work 24 Hours that's happening tomorrow?
Well, Linnea, we have several issues ahead of us on our agenda. Okay, so we worked hard over the past couple of weeks to get a version that we're happy with as a draft view for people to look at it. But in addition, we have other agenda items. For example, we want to be able to maintain it going forward. We want to be able to host it. We want to be able to make it impactful, have meaning. Like, for example, the Agile Manifesto that we talked about earlier had signatories. So they put it up on the website and hundreds of people signed on to it. Wondering if that may be something that's ahead of us with the Manifesto for Future of Work. So those, at least those 3, are potential topics for a session at the 24 hour. I imagine somebody putting up a topic, one of our group putting up a topic that says, how are we going to host the manifesto? And if anybody knows about that, cares about that, is interested in that, they come to the session. That's kind of the way I'm thinking about a couple of these sessions that I have in mind.
Yes.
And then you and I. Go ahead.
The nuance on that is like, as Gunnar said, like, we didn't want this just to be knowledge workers or people that work on a computer, even have access to computer. We've been talking about shirt makers in Philippines, like future of work manifesto and fair exchange for equal work. These things should be more universal. So how do you host that if no one has access to the computer? So like, just to add to your thought there, Charlie, in terms of there's a lot of nuances and subtleties to doing that, to hosting and ownership, all that kind of stuff. So
good. So we're excited at the future of work that we'll get to pitch in and join more of that conversation and see also learn from the many hours of conversations you've had already, how to get a chance to kind of distill, digest the work that you've done already, have discussions, questions like, where did this come from? Or how did this pop up? Or isn't this missing? And you can guys say, oh, is it missing? Or no, we went through this. And this is some of the conversations that came. This is the current iteration of that, right? Like just to get all that context. So we, of course, are very excited to see you there. I'm also curious to hear you. Overall, this year's theme for the event is unimagined possibilities. How does that link into your work around the manifesto, or does it link? Like I'm just kind of curious of that. Like, what does that bring to mind for you? Like unimagined possibilities with is the manifesto, some of those things that we couldn't imagine early on. Alanna, it looks like you're about to say something. I want to pull you in.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the last 4 principles of the manifesto. So that sort of ties in. I mean, we've had these conversations about intellectual property, people's personal information, the ethical use of technology, and fair exchange for work. And so those, as I mentioned earlier, those are sort of the ideal of what would be great to see. And I think that's what sort of ties into the unimagined possibilities, is how do we make this happen?
Good. Anyone else want to add to that, Charlie?
Well, Lena, we want to leave an element of surprise here. We don't want to.
Okay.
We don't want to tell you. We don't want to tell you everything we're up to. But you and I have had a conversation getting ready for this about, okay, so what is work anyway? What's the definition of work? And especially in the context of unimagined possibilities, I think it would be interesting to talk about, well, what is work? And then, following right along, perhaps someone else can do this, but what is the definition of the future? It occurs to us, and we've talked about this at a couple of our Saturday meetings, we're doing it right now. This is the future of work for us. This is the way we intend to work for the most part in the future. Now, beyond that, you think about unimagined possibilities. Part of my thinking on this over the year has led me to the belief that unimagined possibilities are things like, why is work necessary in the first place? Why do people have to work? And my current thinking is it's really a plantation mindset. Glen and I went around on this on Saturday. We are still stuck with the idea that we're on the plantation. And unimaginable possibilities to me mean, and I'm planning on talking about this tomorrow, unimagined possibilities are, let's get off the plantation. And what does that mean to the future of work?
You're actually hitting a nerve that's come up in some of the we had some pre-mingle events yesterday, and where we were also kind of hatching this, like, what are people thinking? What are some topics they're curious about? And the whole idea around monetary exchange for labor came up. What if we don't get paid for work? What if we're bartering? What if we're not adding that kind of monetary value to what we're delivering in a work setting? What is that? Like, poof, then suddenly that's
Yep.
going to change how we're looking at things, right?
Yep. What if the only reason for working was to liberate your people? The only thing you cared about was freedom for your community.
Yeah.
How would that change things?
How would that change?
But that's
exactly. Right. So a good ideas that bubbles up. I can see we're getting ready for our for sessions tomorrow. So just to remind everybody, I am just going to add the email here for those of you who've been following this conversation. Please follow up with Alanna, Charlie, Glen, and Gunnar, who's been working on the Future of Work Manifesto. You can find the manifesto here, and I'm going to add that in here as well. You can look into it, but most of all, we would really like you to come join into some of these conversations, and they're going to happen at probably at different points throughout our 24-hour event that's starting tomorrow. So I want to say thank you very much. I'm going to be excited to jump into sessions with you for our event starting tomorrow, Thursday, May 12th. Thank you very much for your time here, all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.